Hey guys, this is Nick Bumgarner, and welcome to my overview of the new Adobe Lightroom products. So Adobe came out with two new Lightroom products last week. The first one is the classic Lightroom, so Adobe Lightroom Classic CC, which is essentially what we've all been using for the last couple of years. And they came up with a brand new product called Adobe Lightroom CC. So I'm going to go over real quickly kind of what's new with both of these products. So we're going to go ahead and create a new catalog, and we're going to get started in the classic one. We're going to create my new catalog in the Pictures folder, and we're going to have a new folder called Lightroom Tutorial. And we're going to have a new catalog name. And I like to keep these simple, so our folder Lightroom Tutorial, and then our catalog name Lightroom Tutorial LR. So it just makes it kind of easy to remember because it's exactly what I'm doing. Different people are going to have different organizational structures for these. But for what we're doing here, this is going to work for me. So we're going to go in and we're going to go to the library module, and then we're going to import some photos off of my desktop. These are photos I use a lot for one of my classes that I teach. And we're going to go and find them. So Lightroom, we're going to find the raw photos. We're going to import them to a new location using the copy. So we're going to do it in Lightroom Tutorials, new folder, raw photos, and we're going to hit choose. So the first and the biggest thing that Lightroom did here is there's a new option under build previews. Originally, we had minimal, standard, and one-to-one. So minimal previews are just kind of the previews that Lightroom would render when you're in the gallery view. Standard previews are what you see in the loop view, and one-to-one previews are what it shows when you're zoomed in all the way. The new option is Embedded Plus and Sidecar. So embedded previews are a JPEG that's embedded inside of RAW photos. So some of the new Nikon and Canon cameras have these that kind of come baked in. So when you're in the library module, it's going to allow you to be able to see these photos immediately instead of having to wait for the standard or the minimal previews to generate. All right, so we've got a place for it to go. We are selected Embedded Plus Sidecar, and we're going to go ahead and hit the import button. So let's see what happens. So right away, things are loading in. So I can go ahead and click on these photos, and I can already start culling instead of having to wait like I typically would if I was using like standard previews. So if I was using standard previews, it'd take these gallery images a while to load up. But since we use this new embedded in Sidecar, they're loading up almost immediately. So if we go ahead and click on the image and bring it into loop view, right now it says we have an embedded preview that we're looking at. There's also an embedded preview logo over here in the left side of the file in the film strip. And you also see that it says embedded preview here. So we're not going to see the preview in Lightroom yet of how Lightroom's actually going to render these photos on its own. We're seeing like a JPEG preview that the camera created within its RAW file. And it'll take a second before these actually come in and you see the real thing. So these previews only work in the library module, so they don't actually work in the develop module. So if you go into the develop module and hit the D key to get there, we're going to take a second for it to load, and now it's loaded up and it's seeing the actual colors in this image. So it's a really nice feature, and it really helps speed up the culling process, especially if you're in that library view, if you're looking at the gallery, or in the loop view, because it's using embedded JPEG previews instead of a Lightroom having to create its own previews immediately. So it's giving you something to see. And now you see that there's not that embedded Sidecar logo on this photo anymore because it's loaded up the actual colors and the way that Lightroom's going to render it. So if you look at the one to the left of it, you still see this little logo that's telling it's embedded in Sidecar. Now if we click on that photo, it's going to see that loading thing, and then you see what the actual colors in the photo are. So that's something that's really new, and I think it's really cool and really unique. And I'm really glad that Lightroom has done this to help us speed up our workflows. So let's look at something else that Lightroom has done that's really new and really exciting and works really well in my workflow. Let's go back to the gallery view just so we can kind of go through some images really quickly and I can find one that I want to work on. All right, so if you hit the space bar, you can go back into the loop view. Right now it says it's working on an embedded preview because we're still in this library module. If you hit the D key, take us back to the develop tab, we see that's going to go away. So right now we're going to go look at something new, and that's the new brush tools. So brush tools have been around in Photoshop for quite a while now, but they've added one major thing, and that is the raw masking, or the range masking feature rather. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paint a nice big mask here, and we're going to darken up this sky. I'm going to take the feathering down on this brush a little bit because we don't need to be so feathered. I'm going to hit the O key so that we show up with our overlay. And I have it auto mask checked right now, so that's why the overlay looks a little funny in some places. Alright, we pretty much got this mask intact here. I'm going to take the auto mask off for a second, bring my brush size down. Alright, so the first one that we're going to look at is we're going to hit the range mask one. There's two options. There's color masking and there's luminance masking. We're going to go with the luminance because the sky is kind of all one uniform luminosity, and we can kind of pick and choose what we're going to actually use this mask for. So the first thing we can look at, it has two things. It has a range mask and it has a smoothness option. So the range mask works by protecting areas of your image. So if I move the range slider on the right towards the center, it's going to start protecting the black colors. And let's see. There you go. So it started protecting all the things that are darker in the image. So it's not going to be masking on those. And if on the right side, if I pull that down, it starts protecting highlights. So now we're getting less sky that's in our mask and more of the darker blue colors. So let's go with that for a second. So now let's also look at the smoothness. So smoothness affects how smooth this mask is. So if you bring it to the right, it's going to have a bigger selection. And if you bring it to the left, it refines that selection in. And we're going to choose something just over the 50% mark, right around 57. So let's turn off the overlay here so we don't see this red rubyless sky. So let's look at a before and after real quick. So you can see that we've already darkened up the sky a little bit. So these adjustments are only adjusting those darker, bluer parts of the sky, and not so much the parts of the sky that are really cloudy. So let's go ahead and bring those down just a little bit more, make it a little bit more dark and moody of the sky. Let's increase that saturation so we bring in some of those more blue colors here. We're going to bring those shadows down, whites down just a little bit, just giving it a little bit more mood. Let's see. So I like that. I think we made some good changes, and that allows you guys to see kind of what this mask is doing. So let's go ahead and hit the backslash key, and we can see a before and after. So this didn't really bleed onto any of our other parts of the image, so it's a really nice, really quick, and really powerful way to mask photos quickly in Adobe Photoshop Lightroom. And that's something that Lightroom's gotten a lot better over the last couple of years. So their masks are actually usable now, which is really important for a lot of us. So let's pick another image, and we're going to do a color mask on that so I can show you that real quickly. Let's see. Let's go with this blue image. So it's rendering really quickly, and there it is. It popped in. So let's go, and we're going to paint a mask over this blue color here of this car. So we're going to hit the O key so we can see what we're doing. Oh. And we're going to do auto mask so we can make it easy on ourselves. Alright, so we got it pretty good. But now we're going to go into our range mask and we're going to go to color. And this one's pretty easy to do. You just take this eyedropper here and you pick a color. And this one takes a little bit longer to work for whatever reason. And you can actually pick multiple colors. So if you hit the shift key, we can also click down here and add another color. And it helps refine this mask to be exactly what we want it to be. And then you can change the amount of it. So if you move it to the right, it's going to mask more. And if you move it to the left, it's going to bring off the mask some. So we're going to go up and do almost the full mask here, because that's the point we're looking at and where it's looking good. So let's see, we kind of darken it, and let's kind of bring up the saturation on this so that blue's really popping. So that's how you use the new range mask for the color option. So the three things that I think have been really beneficial in this new version of Lightroom Classic CC is that you get the option to do the Embedded Plus the Sidecar. So when you're in that library module, it makes culling through photos faster. And the other two big ones are in the range mask feature. There's one for color that allows you to select things by color, and the other one for luminosity that allows you to make your selections based on the brightness of your image. And I think those two things are both super powerful in the brand new application, Adobe Photoshop Lightroom CC. So this one's completely new, and it's something we've never had before. And it really mimics the mobile workflow that Adobe's already created, but given it to you in a desktop application. So when you enter it, you see immediately that there's a couple things missing. Across the top, we don't have the different Lightroom modules. There's just this one kind of module that you're in, so you don't have to worry about being in Map or being in Develop or being in Library. Modules are gone. Also, having different catalogs for each shoot is gone. So it has a different and new workflow. The way you import photos now is you just go to the plus button, and the way you add to your albums, which are kind of like how you're using catalogs in the past, is this little thing that looks kind of like your collection sets before. So there's a few different views in it. There's a photo grid view where it makes all of your photos kind of have their native aspect ratio, and you can just see them all without borders. There's also a photo grid that's square, that makes them all into squares. Then there's also your loop view, or what they call detail view now. So let's just go into an image real quick. Let's find one that I like. Let's see. All right, I'm kind of digging on these apple fritters. Let's find a good detail shot of it. There we go. Nice apple fritter with some apple cider in the background. So if you're going to work on this image, you pick the sliders up the top, and it brings you to essentially the same old menus you had before, except things are in a little bit different in order. You have light, which is affecting your exposure. Then you have color, which is where you're going to affect your white balance and your vibrance and your saturation and your individual hue, saturation, and luminance channels. Further down, you have your clarity, dehaze, vignette, and then you have your detail, your optics, and your geometry tabs. So it's a significantly different layout than what we have in the traditional Lightroom Classic CC. So the next thing down, you have your crop tool, and then you have your clone and healing tool, then you have your brush tools. And the thing that really disappointed me about this brush tool is it doesn't have those new range mask features. Hopefully, that's something that Adobe will get to add soon, because they say that they're planning on having parity between the two different softwares so that they both do all of the same things. You still have your gradient filters and your radial filter, and then it also allows you to do the same thing you could before, where you can copy and edit settings and paste settings. Where your keyword images is different now too, so you have to go to this keyword tag down here to add your keyword tags. And if you're going to adjust your metadata settings, you have to go down here to this I button for info. The thing it doesn't allow you to do that you could do before is Lightroom allowed for keyword hierarchies, which you can't do in this version of CC. But overall, I think it's a really nice, really intuitive user interface. I can't wait to see when it actually gets feature parity with Lightroom Classic CC. Because, I have a workflow where I'm tethering about 90% of the time, and this new Lightroom CC doesn't allow me to do that. So I'm not going to use this application much at all, just because it doesn't have tethering, which is really disappointing for me. I think it's a really cool user interface, and I really like it. I just wish that it was more usable for me. So let's kind of go back over things real quick. So Adobe did a couple things recently. So they created a new version of the classic Lightroom. So they're calling it Adobe Lightroom Classic CC, which is the same old Lightroom that we've all been using and we've known to grow and love for the last 10 years. And they have the new Adobe Lightroom CC without that classic word in there, which is their new workflow. And it's especially designed for people who want to have like an on-the-go workflow. So I can upload my photos on my desktop and they get synced to the cloud, and I keep the smart previews on my desktop, and that's what I'm working off of. So it's kind of like the opposite of the way that the classic works, where you have your raw files on your machine, and then you have your smart preview images in the cloud if you want to be able to sync across multiple devices. Overall, I think it's a lot of good changes for Lightroom, and I'm really excited to see where they're going to go with this new Lightroom CC program. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below, and I hope you enjoyed the video.